Namaste Priyamitrani. Yushmakam sarvam kushalam asti kim? Kriyati patilring vidhiling iti rupanam abhyasam akuruta kim? So I hope you've been practicing with the forms of the Kriyati patilring and the vidhiling that we have seen in the last two sessions. And in that same flow, I thought it would be great to take this week to introduce you to the 10 groups of verbs. Because each of these groups has been classified according to the similarities of their conjugations. So, so far we have looked at at the first group, which is the adādigaṇa, the 10th group, which is the adādigaṇa, and we lightly touched upon the second group, or the adādigaṇa, and the verb that we looked at was the as. So in today's lecture, which is lecture number 28, I will do an introduction to the conjugation of the as, or the as dhatu, which is to be, from the adādigaṇa and the second group in the various tenses and moods. So I'll do this introduction to the adādigaṇa for you, and we look at them in the vartamana kala, the bhavishya kala, the ajñā, the anadyatana bhuta kala, the kriyati patilring and the vidhiling forms there. And we'll do the conjugations using the verb as, and of course in every class there is also an attempt to add to your vocabulary. So let's look at the vartamana kala and the bhavishya kala. So you remember what was the vartamana kala of as, to be? So saha asti tau stam te santi tvam asi aham tvam asi yuvam sthaha yuyam stha aham asmi avam swaha vayam smaha. Uttamam. So I hope you were able to do that along with me. Now try and see if you can remember the future, and there was a special case here with the as dhatu in the future. Did you guess it? Alright, so the as in the future gets the same form as the future of the bhu dhatu, which is bhavishyati, and therefore bhavishyati, bhavishyataha, bhavishyanti, bhavishyasi, bhavishyathaha, bhavishyatha, bhavishyami, bhavishyavaha and bhavishyamaha. Uttamam. I'm very happy that you're able to join along with me. So let's look at the forms there in different colors. So we have asti, staha, santi, asi, sthaha, stha, asmi, swaha, smaha. What I would also encourage you to do is to sort of learn it by rote and do it really fast, so that it becomes like a default mode and you don't have to think about every grammatical form, that it just rolls out without even your conscious mind paying attention to the details of the grammatical endings. And what happens to the future? So bhavishyati, bhavishyataha, bhavishyanti, bhavishyasi, bhavishyathaha, bhavishyatha, bhavishyami, bhavishyavaha, bhavishyamaha. Alright, so what I'll do is I'm going to do it at a rapid fire mode, and I'd like you to see if you're able to then say it along with me. So ready, steady, go. Bhavishyati, bhavishyataha, bhavishanti, bhavishyasi, bhavishyatha, bhavishyatha, bhavishyami, bhavishyavaha, bhavishyamaha. Astu. So doesn't matter if you're not there as yet, but I look forward to you catching up on that as fast as you can. So in the meanwhile, let's look at the other verbs that are from this group. So we have the verb, the first verb, which is atti, and the name of the group is named after that verb, which is atti. So at means to eat, and you have at, adi, and you have a kind of a sandhi taking place there with the consonant and the vowel. So at, adi becomes adādi, at, etc. Ganaha, the group of those verbs, and it is the second group of verbs. So at becomes atti. So atti, and then it is attaha, adanti. Okay, so you have the that comes in. So like what we see is that there is something more that gets added into the conjugation of these verbs, and then it will go on, and I'd like you to explore this on your own. For now, for this intermediate level, it is not really required for you to know the in-depth forms of these verbs that I have given on the side. You will not be required to know them in depth, but a familiarity with them could be of help just for your own practice. So here we have swap, which is swapiti, means to sleep, swapiti, and in the future swapsyati. Similarly, atti in the future was atsyati. Uttamam. Bha, to shine. So bha becomes bhati, to shine forth, and bhasyati, will shine. So what are the other words that you know that are formed around the root bha? The name of the country of India is Bharata. So bha means the light, and rata means immersed. So it was the land that was immersed in light. Here light, of course, meaning the symbolic light of knowledge. And you also have another word which is good morning, which is suprabhatam. So it means suprabhatam, that which has shone forth well. And whether the sun is shining or not, the entire being has to shine forth in the morning. Okay, so suprabhatam. And the good news is that if you're not feeling up to it, but you say bha, 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 and you will see how your whole system will be energized once more. And then you have ya for yati and yasyati. So we've already looked at the verb ya in our previous lessons. So yati and yasyati will go. For bha, there was one more important word that you're familiar with, which is for language, it is bhasha. And what about bhasha? Why is it called the shining thing? Because our language is that which makes our thoughts shine forth, right? And therefore they say you must be very careful about the language we use. I mean, we, not just you, but all of us should be conscious about the language we use, because it is reflective of the person that we are. And just one last thing on that is that in the Yajurveda, in the Taittiriya Brahmana, there is a very nice line which says, Aham adantam admi. Aham adantam admi means Aham annam adantam admi. So I, annam is food, adantam the one who is eating, admi. So this is the supreme being that is saying that I am the one who devours that who is eating rice. So it's a very profound statement if you think about it, but that will be for another time. For now, let's move on. So let's look at the ajna and the anadyatana bhutakala, and of course the kriyati patil ring also there. So we have astu or stat, and this is a form that you will find in other places as well. So astu or stat there, and then stam and yuyam te santu, tvam edhi. So like I said, this was a total googly. It comes out of somewhere, but that form has been derived by using certain rules of Panini's grammar there. Okay, so edhi, stat or stam, yuvam stam, yuyam sta. Aham asani, not very often used very often, but you have to know the form. Avam asava and vayam asama. So let us all be Sanskrit scholars. How would you say that? Sanskrita panditaha is the word. So Sanskrita panditaha asama. Let's all be Sanskrit panditas. Uttamam. Moving on. In the bhutakala, so asit, astam, asan, asihi, astam, asta, asam, aswa, asma. Uttamam. I was very restless. How would you say that? Aham chanchalaha asam. If it's a lady, aham chanchala asam. Now I am quiet. Idanim shantaha or shanta asmi. Uttamam. Let's move on to the verb, other verbs there, and see what happens. So at becomes attu or attat and adat. And in the kriyati patil ring, we know that it's a combination of the bhavishya and the bhuta, so it becomes atsyat. Now why atsyat? Because the future is atsyat. You add the bhuta to that, plus atsyat becomes atsyat. Uttamam. Swap, swapitu, aswapat and aswapsyat. Uttamam. Bha, bhatu, abhat and abhasyat. Uttamam. Ya, yatu, ayat and ayasyat. So I'd like you to say that if he had or if she had more time, she would have slept. Tarhi yadi samayaha abhavishyat tarhi sa aswapsyat. Uttamam. Moving on. So we look at the anadyatana bhuta and the vidhiling there. So you remember what we had done in our previous lesson, where we saw that once you know the bhutakala, the vidhiling is very, very similar to that, except for a few changes here and there, and it's always a fun exercise to see what changes and what stays similar. So asit, bhuta becomes syat. Syat means may it be so. So this vidhiling has this thing of may it be or it might be. Astam, syatam, asan, syuhu. So like I said, this is very different. Next, asihi, astam, asta. So asihi becomes syaha, astam, syatam, asta, syata, uttamam, asam, aham, syam, asva, avam, syava, asma, vayam, syama, uttamam. Now let's do an application in that small table that we have there. So if you want to say, if there was time, then yadi samayah syat, then he can work. Tarhi karyam kuryat. Uttamam. But you can also use the other form, which is yada and tada. So you can say if there would be time. So you can say in the future. So if there would be time, yadi samayah syat, then he would do the work. So tarhi karyam kuryat. Uttamam. If there would be time, then he would go home. Yadi samayah syat or yada samayah syat. When there is time, then he would go home. Yada samayah syat tari griham gachet. Uttamam. So if there would not be work, then he would play. Yadi karyam na syat tada saha kridet. Uttamam. Then he would watch a movie. Yadi karyam na syat tari chalanachitram pashyet. Uttamam. If he studied well, then writing would be possible, because I am trying to use the verb to be. So if he did not read well, then or if he read well, then he would write well, or he would be able to write well. Yadi samyak pathet tari samyak lekhitum sambhavah syat. So if he studied well, then it would be possible to write well. Uttamam. Let's move on. So do a sambhashanam with Piyusha there.
Namaste Arye.
Namaste Piyusha.
Adya सायंकाले नाटकं भविष्यति भवती तत्र यास्यति किम्?
आम्, अहं नाटकार्थम् अवश्यं यास्यामि, यतः तस्मिन् मम एकः छात्रः अस्ति, द्वे छात्रे च स्तः, अन्यानि मित्राणि अपि भविष्यन्ति।
नाटकस्य कथा अतीव रुचिरा अस्ति।
आम् इति अहमपि मन्ये, अतः मम विश्वासः अस्ति यत् दर्शकाः तत्र न स्वप्स्यन्ति।
आम्।
त्वमपि नाटकार्थम् आयासि किम्?
आम्, यदि मम कार्यं न स्यात् तर्हि अहं तत्रैव स्याम्।
उत्तमम्, अहम् आशां करोमि यत् त्वं तत्र स्याः।
तर्हि तत्रैव मिलावः।
नमस्ते।
नमस्ते आर्य।
Let's do an application of what we've just learned, especially using a lot of syat. This verse is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it says, Gurur na sasyat, swajano na sasyat, pita na sasyat, janani na sasyat, daivam na tatsyan na patishcha sasyan, namocha yedyah samupeta mrityum. Alright, so what is he saying there? Gurur na yasyat, gurur na sasyat. So gurur na, there is a sandhi there, so it is guruhu plus na. Okay, guruhu na sasyat, there is also a sandhi there, sahasyat, as you can hear the grammar there, swajano. So we know that that is a sandhi, visarga sandhi, swajano na sasyat. So again we have a visarga there, syat pita, so there will again, so na sa syat janani, so there is a vyanjana sandhi here where it is syat plus ja becomes syat ja. There is a doubling of the ja there, na sa syat, daivam na tat syana, so tat plus syat plus na. Okay, and then you have, so here again there is a break, patishcha. So patishcha is also patihi plus cha, patishcha sasyan. So that will be sa, and then syan is here, it is syat plus na. So you see there is a doubling of the consonant there. And then mocha yedyah. So mocha yedyah is actually mocha yet. Again we have a vidhiling there, plus yaha. So you see how the consonant tends to become another consonant, accompanying consonant there. Samupeta mrityum. Alright, and what is the meaning of this? that guru is not a guru, that relative is not a relative, a father is not a father, a mother is not a mother, that deity is not a deity, and the husband is not a husband, if he cannot liberate one from impending death. So I'll say it and you repeat after me. Guru na sasyat, swajano na sasyat, pita na sasyat, janani na sasyat, daivam na tatsyat, na patischa sasyat, namo cha yedyah samupeta mrityum. Uttamam. So a lot of food for thought there. And I'd like to just read out this quote by Dr. Edwin Brandt, who's an American Indologist and author of the book Krishna, a source book. So he says, the Bhagavata ranks as an outstanding product of Sanskrit literature. Perhaps more significantly, the Bhagavata has inspired more derivative literature, poetry, drama, dance, theatre and art than any other text in the history of Sanskrit literature, with the possible exception of the Ramayana. So it's given rise to profuse inspirations and new literature, this text. So a few references there, but what I'd like you to notice here is that I've given you references of sites that can give you access to texts that have different verb forms and noun forms, because during our live session you were asking me that. So I've tried to give you a certain online reference for that, a collection of references for that. So Viryam astute. So Viryam, Sanskritadhyanam, Bahu Viryam Avashyakam Asti. Lot of heroic courage required to do Sanskritam, but I can assure you that the rewards will be very fulfilling. Shubham astu.